Hello and welcome to Dukascopy TV. Eurozone finance ministers said it will give Spanish banks a €30 billion bailout by the end of July. Today I'm joined in the studio by Marco Murgida to discuss this in further detail. Welcome, Marco.
Hi, Darren. Hi, thank you for having me.
No problem, Marco. So where do you think this money is coming from? And do you really think the Eurozone can afford it right now?
Absolutely. I think the bad news is that this money is going to come from all of us. So, tax increases will definitely happen all over Europe. The ultimate man on the street will actually pay for this. But in the meantime, there is a lot of structural changes that are being put in place, especially for the banks. But for other companies and the public sector as well. So they're doing the right things to actually get this money up and running and at disposal for financial institutions and other people in troubles.
So what type of budget cuts will come with this decision?
Well, there's already some budget cuts that have been put in place. But a good example is Italy. They're cutting down on at least 30% of their public employees and the services there. There is a lot of politicians that have been making a lot of money and have been granted a lot of pensions and money that is recurring, although they're not actually active in some of these countries anymore. So they're cutting there. That's very important. Hopefully in top management in some of the public companies, that's where we need to cut some expenses as well. And what's happening, we can see it especially here in Switzerland, is the little witch hunt on Swiss banks, where European countries are trying to repatriate the money that was deposited abroad to actually tax it and get some money out of these people who haven't been paying taxes. So it all comes down to taxes after all.
And how has this news affected the euro?
Well, the euro has, after the euphoria of about 2 weeks ago, where the finance ministers of Europe have decided to help with 130 billion the European economy, where the euro went up to something around 126.5, 127. Reality is kicking in. So slowly it's dropping off again. Confidence in whether these measures are actually going to be timely is fading a little bit. Fundamentally, Europe has a problem. I think they're doing the right things, or we are doing the right things, but it just takes a little time to implement. From that standpoint, euro is probably going to go a little bit lower from here as well. There's one thing, one factor that people tend to forget is that more than 70% of money flows in foreign exchange are not speculative money. So there is not going to be a fallout unless one of the countries, the major countries like Germany, would drop out of this pact. There's not going to be a fallout in the euro, but I think gradually we'll find his level expected to go to 115, 118 against the dollar.
Okay, thank you. And how much do you think this bailout will help the Spanish banks recover? And what is your outlook for the Spanish economy over the next year?
It depends a lot on one single factor, which is time. I think this money will help the banks, and it's buying them time. We can see that they're putting in place, or the European finance ministers are putting in place measures to push the structural changes that are needed in the financial sector in Spain or in Europe in general. One example being that the Spanish banks need to write off all their short-term papers, which is not good for the end user or the end investor, but that at least gives them more touch to the reality. And the second point being, for example, that they're forced. The Spanish banks are forced to sell their real estate portfolio. I think it's starting October, where they have to start to sell at market, which will make them focus a little bit more on their core competences. So keep an eye on risk. Banks tend to tend to take more risk whenever they're not making money. So we're working on that. They're definitely working on that, and they're keeping an eye on that. In general, for Spain, for the Spanish economy, I think it's been going through a really tough time. It's buying time. They've applied for an extension of the time where they have to get their deficit below 3%. So I think they're going to get granted for that, and it's all about time. And countries have time, luckily. So for the time being, I think they are gonna come out of it. Don't forget, Spain produces a lot of things. So as in most of the countries in Europe, Greece being an exception, but like Italy, the economy is twofold. So all the export part of the economy is doing really, really well. Italy is having record numbers on that side. But the internal market is where the biggest problem lies. But because of the twofolds of the economy, I think Spain is going to make it.
Thank you. And there's a lot of talk about bailouts at the moment. How do you think Germany is feeling about this bailout?
Well, Germany is still there. They're still supporting the idea of the Eurozone and the Euro in general. As you probably heard, the biggest issue is now to see whether the new fund or the EFS is actually against constitution. So they're looking at the Supreme Court in Germany is actually looking into that now. That could be a big issue if the Supreme Court decides that's against the law. I think they will have to find some time, or whether if they take a long time to decide, that could harm the European zone. But in general, especially for the smaller countries, I don't think the big five in Europe will let the smaller countries go down. Austerity is going to be tough for most of these countries, and is already tough. But I think there is no fear that they're going to pull out of this Eurozone or the idea of the Euro in general.
Okay, thank you. And finally, let's move on to Greece, another country who's in desperate need of a bailout right now. Do you think they will get a bailout by the end of the summer?
Absolutely. As I said before, I think Europe cannot afford to create a precedence case with Greece. Don't forget, Greece is not even 3% of the European zone in terms of GDP. So I think Greece will be bailed out. Will the austerity measures loosen up? Probably a little bit, because of the fact that the Spanish finance sector gets helped without any austerity measures. They probably loosen up a little bit, but the biggest problem in Greece is the fact that they don't really produce anything. So they have an economy based on some major players like the shipping or tourism. They have to refocus on that and then get their public sector under control. And I think they can make it. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tougher than probably most other countries in Europe, but they can make it. That's for sure.
Thank you very much, Marco, for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you, Doireann. Thanks for having me.
That is all we have time for right now, but stay tuned to Dukascopy TV because we will be back with lots of more interesting interviews like this. Goodbye.